I've never needed any of them. All right. Okay, here we go. Hi, Buff friends. I'm Kai Perrignon, Buff head programmer. It is April 3rd, 2026, 10:40 a.m.-ish my time, and I am chatting with Revelations of Divine Love writer-director Caroline Golum. Thank you for screening your film with us, and thank you for talking with me today.
You're so very welcome. I with this, is this something you're using in the future for the festival? Should I say I'm so glad the screening went well?
You can choose to approach time however you wish, but it will be for the future, yeah.
I was just watching Total Recall right before I hopped on this recall. So what I'm going to do is say, hey, if you're listening to this, I hope you liked the film. Hello, future me. If you're reading this, I hope everyone liked the film. Okay.
Me too. Or have very strong opinions about it that are fun.
I want absolute rejection of everything that the film stands for, or a total embrace of it, and nothing in between. This is my dream possible outcome for an audience in Australia.
This have you had this is shouldn't be my first question, but it's going to be now. Do you have you found any real haters of the movie yet? Have you gotten any responses? People been like, fuck this.
There have been some. I don't have Letterboxd, and so I don't. And part of that is so that I don't compulsively check the ratings of my work on Letterboxd, because that would just add another to my laundry list of anxieties. So instead, I just pretend that whoever didn't like the movie, if I come across bad review of some of my work, was just having a bad day that day and they weren't in a good mood. And that's why they didn't like the film. My last film is a comedy. So if somebody doesn't like that movie, then they just weren't in the mood to laugh. And that's okay. And it's okay for them to feel that way. And if somebody watches this movie and they're coming out of it going, that was so dumb and so silly, then I guess the best I can imagine is, well, they just weren't in a mood to contemplate, the divine. Maybe that's just they weren't in the right headspace for it, and I respect that. I'm not in that headspace every day. It's relatable.
That's a very good way to approach the haters. I also think another good way to approach the haters is to be like, yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh,
Let
sure,
me,
yeah, of
yeah.
course. There's
Uh,
definitely a part of me that's like a Dennis the Menace, like, yeah, fuck you. Come and
yeah.
get me, copper.
I made a movie about religion. Fuck you.
Yeah, you know what? Speaking of haters, I really want, and maybe by the time this interview is out in the world, it will have transpired. Perhaps by speaking it into the universe now, it becomes a gift for future us. But I really would love it if Pope Leo and Mel Gibson both watched this film. So if they hear about it in some way, I just keep telling people, hoping that if I tell people about it, it'll happen.
What do you think Mel
So
Gibson would think of the movie?
I'm dying to know, which is why I want him to see it. This is a man who clearly loves Christian theology and Jesus and the Catholic Church, and it has a lot of profound, visceral, and personal meaning to him, the way that it did for Julian, and the way that it has for the devoted for centuries, perhaps more so in the 14th century than in today's century. But still, the people that really connect with this stuff, they really connect with it. So, what does he think? I'm dying to find out.
Well, okay, I'm gonna turn this into my first real question here because Mel Gibson, Australia's own, has a new movie in the works right
But
now.
born in New York,
Born in New York. Oh, I forgot about that. Right, Born in New York. So he's got the best, the evil of both worlds in him. Yeah.
just like you.
Just like, oh no, don't say that. No. Oh, no, you're right. I am. I can also still be a movie star now as well. By that metric. Okay, but he's got a new movie in production. He's got The Passion of the Christ 2, Revelations of Divine Love, Passion of the Christ 2. We'll see which is better. But what movies? They're out. They're coming out. You are, in addition to being a filmmaker, you're a film critic and a programmer. So what have you
Mhm.
been watching recently?
You mean besides Total Recall, like
Besides Total
30?
Recall, great start. Yeah.
So, if we're talking in April, then I've just come off of a fantastic week of movie going, because in conjunction with the premiere of our film at Anthology for the opening weekend before it opened, and had in the future, if you're listening, and had many successful sold out shows throughout the month of April. Fingers crossed. I've got to program a bunch of medieval films along with it at Anthology, and thanks to Jed Rapfogel, the programmer there, who gave me the long leash. And I programmed a bunch of medieval movies that I love that have perhaps at best a tangential connection to our film, but that I programmed because they're all fucking bangers. They're just like medieval rippers from start to finish. Excalibur, Flesh and Blood, Adventures of Robin Hood, Pasolini's The Canterbury Tales, Andy Milligan's Guru the Mad Monk,
Yes.
Roger Corman's The Mask of the Red Death, which isn't even medieval. It's actually more like Renaissance, but who cares? It's still a sick movie. And that movie actually did have a little bit to do with our film too, in some roundabout way. But yeah, I just like picked all this all the medieval movies that I like the best that have nothing to do with this one. But but they kind of do in the way that, everything that you watch just gets kind of like distilled into a stew into your brain and then reconstituted as something else.
I think Milligan is going to come up again in my questions later. So I'm glad
Ooh, good.
glad
I
you
love
said.
him.
Yeah. I feel like there's a spoiler alert for my later question. I feel like there's a bit of a Milligan-esque quality to some of your interior spaces in your movies that I've seen.
Totally deliberate, and we can talk about it when it comes up.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so kind of second question. Okay, so this is tying to that. Like, do you feel like the modes of like criticism and programming interact with your filmmaking side? Like, how do you feel, and vice versa?
Good question. I think they do. And, they're it's not like, people haven't been doing all those things at once or to varying degrees of prolificness since the medium was invented. But for me, writing about movies is just like a supplement to better understanding them so that I can better describe when I'm working with other people. And so I don't waste their time because that's my greatest fear is wasting people's time. So that I can better convey or articulate what it is that I'm trying to do or what I think a scene should be about or how I feel it should look. And writing about a movie uh, based on how it makes you feel as an audience member or a viewer gives you, I think, insight to the other side of the equation. Because there's what I make, which is one movie, and then there's the other movie, which is what people see. And actually, it's the movie you shoot and the movie you edit. It's the movie you write, and then the movie you shoot, and then the movie you edit, and then the movie the audience sees. So it's four movies in one movie for the price of one, but it changes all the time. And so as a writer and also as a programmer too, sometimes I'm thinking about movies as a viewer and sometimes I'm thinking about it as somebody who works at it. So I kind of go back and forth in my mind and I think, well, when I'm at the movies, like what do I look at and I go, yes, that oof, when you're like, cinema, what is it that, because that's what I seek when I go to the movies, is to be like reminded not only that it's a movie, but also that it's like such a movie, so much movie that there's movie happening here. Like I delight in the medium in that way. I don't go for like realism, although sometimes you watch a realistic movie and you go, movie, right? It's not like it's a value judgment or it's about an aesthetic choice or anything. It's a feeling of like, yeah, I'm watching a movie. This is a great example of the art form. So I think about him, from a bunch of different perspectives, and I decided to start writing about movies because I had a lot of thoughts that I wanted to subject people to. It's a nice way to make walking around money. Honestly, you can't support yourself as a writer if you're freelancing, or some people can who are very good. I can't because I don't want to work that hard at it. So, it's a nice little walking around money and a good excuse to go to the movies. And also, you review films made by people and if you like it, then you can help other people to see it because it gets good press too, and it contributes to the ecosystem in that way. And then as a programmer, it's just like, who doesn't love making a list of movies? Give me a theme and I've got a list of movies for you. It's fun, to think of a thesis and then to think of films that support that thesis and or look at other supplementary things that aren't necessarily features that coincide with it. I've done programs that are, you know, uh, films of different lengths or feature and short pairings, things like that. And they're both like free ways to engage with the medium that don't require a lot of expenditure, unlike filmmaking, which is quite expensive. Even for a film as inexpensive as ours, it is still quite expensive. So yeah, it's just a free way to get the practice in, I guess. In short, I should have made that a lot shorter,
No, it's
but
good. It's great.
whatever. You get the idea.
No, I think it's a very good answer. Thank you. I do not wish it was shorter. Um, okay, and also, I mean, can we kind of bounce off that a little bit as well? Because you're talking about programming, not just features, but other things. And to get to the film proper, kind of, you previously made another film on Julian of Norwich, the
Yeah.
wonderful collage short called "The 16 Showings of Julian Norwich," which, if people at home have not seen it, I love the short film. I think
On Vimeo.com.
it's on
You can go find it.
Vimeo.com for free right now. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And their approaches are like different, but they share, at least in my view, like an appreciation for textured objects, kind of the cinema's religion, and also lead actor Tessa Strain. So, can you just talk to about how you came to Julian's story in the first place and how your conception of like adapting it cinematically changed between the short and the feature?
Absolutely, yeah. The short was never meant to be a proof of concept or in some way like a preview of coming attractions for the feature. And we ultimately ended up making one of those, what our actor Theo plays Father Ambrose called a visual précis, which I think is so much nicer than proof of concept and true to the spirit of the 14th century when, if you were an English speaker, using French was very much in vogue. So it felt apropos to call it a visual précis, which is separate from the watercolor movie. How I came to Julian, the condensed version of this, is that Dr. Lawrence Bond, PhD, who co-wrote the script with me, was in my first film, A Feast of Man. He does an amazing job. We were also roommates. And in between when I had finished Feast of Man and when I started working on this film and when Feast of Man had its festival run, I entered a period of profound depression and he went to grad school. So he, was studying the Middle Ages and asked one day if I wanted to hear him read a paper that he wrote about Julian. And I said, of course, sure, and I was taken by how cinematic the whole story is. I mean, his paper about her, is remarkable, but also I think it's on JSTOR. Maybe it's not. I'll ask him. But the account that this woman gave of what happened to her, what she describes, the bodily feeling, how these visions came to her, it felt very cinematic. There's one moment in the text that we didn't get to put in the film, which really stinks because, obviously time and money and supplies and all these things like converge. But she describes seeing the face of Christ and then it melts almost like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It transforms before her into like a grisly mask, a plague mask. What we did get from her text in the movie, because it was a much easier effect to do, and because it also is very important, is what she writes about, which is looking at the crucifix, the face of Christ on a crucifix, like a model crucifix, and watching it transform into the living face of the Savior. And if that's not a cross dissolve, my friend, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Like I heard that described and I read it in the text. I went, that's what she's talking about. So, it also got me thinking more broadly, like, because we also looked back at like practical effects and tried to do some for this film and looked at a lot of silent films for the set building ideas and the early cinema, silent cinema, is coming along at kind of a similar time where there's like a lot of magic and stagecraft and things like that. And I do wonder like how much of our shared grammatical moving image language is just like years and years and years of people having visions and then figuring out a way to make it happen. Like what would be comparable in her waking life in the 14th century to the face of an inanimate object transforming as if by a dissolve into the face of the living Savior? How would she know what it looked like? But it turned into flesh in front of her. And I mean, shit, like, don't you want to see that movie? I had to do it. So that's how I came to the material. And then I wrote the part for Tessa. But I didn't tell her about it until we were done with the script. And the film was originally going to be a short that was just her visions. Then it became a feature that was a 2-week shoot. And then it became the feature, which is a 5-week shoot. And so she really committed to this. And by the way, it took, from when I started working on the script in 2017 to when we shot it in 2023, that was 6 years of me being like, any day now, like in Ed Wood, where they're like, the green monster next year's smash hit. Like it felt very much like every year I'm like a tout and I'm like, we're going to do it. Every time I'd see her, I'd go, one day you're going to get the call. You're going to get the call and you're going to know. So when I finally roped her into it, she was so down to clown. It was great. And she stuck with it. She like agreed to be in it early in the process. And then the pandemic happened and she was still like, yeah, I'll go do it. Like we took those look shots in 2019, like winter 2019. I'm staring at one of them right now on my wall. I held on to a bunch of them. So the watercolor film was just like, speaking of the pandemic, this was like something I did season 1 of the pandemic to stay in touch with the material. And Julian, lived in isolation. And funnily enough, when people have to stay indoors, anchoritic writing becomes popular. Like it starts resurfacing or works about hermits. And, people are going back to the source of like, shit, well, if a plague's happening, like who else was dealing with a plague and who was writing about it and how are they dealing with it? And so there was this proliferation of interest in Julian of Norwich. at least among like literary and historian circles and other esoteric fucks like me who like this sort of thing. So it felt strangely apropos to be working on something about her during a time when people were also chattering more online about anchorites and medieval life and like living in a cloistered world. People really like that imagery too. And the church has been popping off in a big way. I guess again, people are really into the Roman Catholic Church again, and so it felt apropos. But that's not why I made the short film. I did it so that I could also test some stuff out, like experiment, just get my hands involved, like experimenting with putting together tableau and refamiliarizing myself with what you're putting in a frame from side to side and also from front to back. So in medieval art, I'm not going to show you any because this is going to be, I think, just on the radio or something, right? But or is
You
it
can
transparent?
no, it'll be okay. The way it's gonna play is that kind of what you said is yes. Okay, the way it's gonna play is that there'll be like 5 minutes on the day of the screening, and then there'll be a QR code, and then it'll be the whole thing, or like I'll edit it, but there'll be
Oh, then people can watch the whole thing,
it'll be so it'll
right?
be
Then
on YouTube, yeah.
I can hold stuff up.
And it'll also be, yeah, cool. There'll also be a podcast. Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful painting. Yeah. I love the
Yeah, this is like
70s.
some later. This is like a little bit later in the 15th century, but you get the general idea. I can also grab some other crap for you. Should have prepared a fucking PowerPoint if I'd known. Oh, it's okay. You get the idea though. Like medieval art is all about framing, like creating like a nice like frame, and like the way people are placed is really important too. And if you're going to make a medieval movie and you don't have a lot of money, you make it look like the art. That's like the quickest way for you to and I'm sure you have a question about this coming up. Like, how do you make it look like the 14th century? And the answer is you make it look like the painting. So that's what we did. And that's what the watercolor movie was. And in fact, actually, I can probably show you if I had them handy. I showed them to somebody today in my messy office, my watercolor title cards that I did.
It's so
Years ago. I know I held on to these. Yeah, this is the Peasants' Revolt. But it's a watercolor. So it looks different from the film because the film is a projection. So I printed out like transparencies, like transparent scans of these things. Oh no, wait, that was only for some of them. Some of them were printed transparencies, and the other ones were a projector that was like on the wall that was projecting like
because
the black
they the credits they do feel like they have the craggly some of them have that craggly quality of like like you've seen old fresco or something. So is that what that
yeah,
effect is? Yeah.
yeah, similar. I might have some other stuff that works for it too. I mean, you can also edit all this stuff out if you feel like it. Oh, here. Yeah, these gels. So this isn't the room I did the film in. I did it in another room in my cavernous apartment. But oh, now I remember. Yeah, so I printed it on cardstock. I knew I didn't have transparencies made, but I used one of those old school, like literally from school overhead projectors where you have the thing that you lay face down on a light box and it, this kind of thing. And I used a certain stock of paper that I knew would make it light enough to kind of paint over, but not so light that you couldn't tell what it was. So, and that's where the painting came from. And I ended up not doing any kind of stop motion watercolor work in this movie, but it still helped us to think about it. It helped the thinking process. And again, similar to tie it all back around, similar to the film criticism and the programming, anything that you can do to think about it better helps you talk about it better, and that makes you better at the job.
And I like that approaching it from another medium entirely as well. Like I think that's all.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everybody does that. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people do. Earlier today, I was watching my circa 2002 Criterion Collection DVD of The Last Temptation of Christ because it's Holy Week. We're in Holy Week right now, and I love that movie. There are other movies I like that aren't about Jesus, but this is one of the ones about Jesus that I like the best. And I was listening with the commentary, and they were talking about how they drew all this stuff out about they drew all the different shots that they were going to have to do for the life of Christ and the Last Temptation, and like how they were looking at all this art by Bosch and Fra Angelico and things like that. Filmmaking is just like every art that gets dumped into one art. Like it's the art where you get to use all the different arts at once, which is what makes it, along with opera, a superior art form.
Does
So
opera also put stuff everything? I'm not really familiar with the opera.
yeah,
You stuff everything into the opera?
you
Does
can put
one?
anything in opera. Yeah, I've seen some crazy shit happen at the opera.
Okay. Like
Yeah,
what?
there's animals on stage. projection mapping.
Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Come to New York and come to the opera. We really know how to do it over
You
here.
know, to the opera. I have to, for an upcoming interview, I have to watch 2 hours of an opera, and I'm stressed out
Oh,
about it.
poor thing.
Like, I'm just like, because I'm like, hey, that was cool. Can you tell me about it? And that'll be my question. I gotta do some research. Okay, wait. Okay, so let's wait. Sorry, just opera distraction. What did you have anything more to say on what we were just talking about? Sorry. What right.
I feel like I've sufficiently answered the question of where did the idea come from and what are the similarities, if any, between your short watercolor film and your feature?
Yes, there we go. Right. And and you have, and I love learning. And for me, revelation of my own timeline of the movie started before you actually made the watercolor movie. Very cool. But both of them work very well as a pairing. Again, people at home, go after this, go watch the short. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's different. Um, and you were answering that question. So, okay, then uh, beyond beyond the eponymous text, were some other reference points for the feature, cinematic or otherwise. I was thinking a little bit of, I don't know if you've read Marjorie Kemp by Robert Gluck. That was in my head a bit.
Sure, I love that book. Yeah, it's a great one. That was part of it. There were scenes in the script and then scenes that we shot with Marjorie Kemp. She's played in those scenes by a great actress named Christy Bryant. She gave a fantastic performance. I told her I wanted Real Housewives of Bishop's Lynn, and she delivered, and it was fantastic. But ultimately, for the purposes of the story that we were trying to tell, the film had to be just completely, not limited to Julian exclusively because there are parts of the film that take place outside her immediate sphere, but pretty much within that time. The Marjorie Kemp stuff was like a jump forward in time, and I didn't stick the landing the way I'd wanted to. But it's fine. I think it contains the film in a nice little way, and it leaves room for me to make my Marjorie Kemp sequel. The other references, I mean, we were looking at so many art books.
Mhm.
We had all these books at the studio that our art director Grant Stoops had kind of acquired over the years, and that I'd also acquired because Google image search became like kind of unusable when we started making this movie. And obviously, in the last 3 years, it's just gotten worse. But we got like the first wave of Google image search not being usable, which was annoying because I had been using it up until that point for many, many years to like think about this, look up medieval shit for this movie. But we found these books and it allowed us to be, first of all, a lot more accurate in what we were looking at, but also like a lot more kind of like quick and on the ready. Like we'd look at something if we needed it, we wouldn't have to stay on the computer looking it up. We'd just go to a book and flip through and see if there was something that looked like what we were looking for, and not like the whole movie is just lifting the compositions and styles of these paintings whole cloth, but something that just sort of jogged the mind. A lot of movies also that I watched, and in some cases shot listed just to get an idea of when you're shooting a medieval movie. Because the other thing is there's the medieval epic, which is what the film series was, but a lot of medieval art films are very low budget. It's like a very low budget time because you don't need a lot. Most of the time, a lot of stuff is outside. So like Lancelot du Lac, The Trial of Joan of Arc, the Bresson trial of Joan of Arc, which is set pretty much entirely in the courtroom. So, how are you maximizing one space that's like clearly a set? The Visiteurs du Soir, the French film, I really like that one. Caravaggio was up on the list there. Percival Le Gaulois too. Just anything that was like leaning into the uncanniness and the artifice of the era. And just last night, I saw Pasolini's Canterbury Tales, which is just remarkable. I mean, I love that film so much. And it's a movie that was shot in and around Canterbury, like where the tales went down, or where the telling of the tales on the way to Canterbury went down, I should say. And they found these really remarkable historic trusts and like old preserved towns that they filmed in. But still, the way everybody's framed, the way that they're standing staggered in a certain way, very deliberately done to evoke medieval art composition. So just looking at the paintings, there's always a short answer at the end of my long answer, and I should just give the short answer first.
Well,
Looking at the painting.
that's also how like academic papers work, though. You say all the stuff and then you go, any conclusion, one line, right? So that's just
Here's the thing you should have read first. I know. No, this is part of the process of making a movie. In and around a figure that's the subject of much academic scholarship is that you get into this kind of like scholarly mindset about it. And now, because I know a lot about something, in particular this era, because I studied it extensively for this film, not with the same rigor that a grad student would, but I would say the next best thing. I can just go on and on and on about it, which is like why you go to grad school for something, so that you can learn to go on and on and on about it. I can't wait to be obsessed with something else. That'll
Yeah.
be a fun day.
I can very much empathize with that feeling. Okay, in the short, you extensively quote art historian Erwin Panofsky.
Yeah,
And I'm going to be annoying because I feel like I'm not going to remember to do this, but I'm just going to quote the whole thing now in case I forget to cut it in. But the quote is, "It might be said that a film called into being by cooperative effort is the nearest modern equivalent of a medieval cathedral. The role of the producer corresponding more or less to that of the bishop or archbishop, that of the director to the architect in chief, and that of the actors, cameramen, cutters, sound men, makeup men, and the diverse technicians to those who work provided the physical entity of the finished product. From the sculptors, glass painters, bronze casters, carpenters, and skilled masons down to the quarrymen and woodsmen." Can you speak to why this quote compels you so?
absolutely. I believe I read that quote in the introduction that in an introduction that Jonathan Rosenbaum wrote for a book on medieval cinema. And that book, the reason why I was trying to find a copy of it is was the basis of another medieval film series that played at Anthology Film Archives maybe 13 years ago, or 12 years ago, that I was very fond of. And I was trying to think of, uh, books like books of criticism about medieval cinema, thinking about the genre of the medieval film and what are the tropes and why are they tropes and how have people tried to solve the riddle of how to depict the 14th century, which is, we have a lot of stuff from the 14th century, but there's a lot that we just don't have and don't know how people render it, how they judge the era. And so I was trying to find a nice meaty book about it. I remembered that Anthology had the series. I looked up the book, and that quote was in the introduction. And it blew me away because, of course, like a book about the Middle Ages in cinema is going to have something that likens the building of a cathedral with the making of a studio film. What I love about this quote, especially, is that Erwin Panofsky was making an address, I believe, at Princeton, um, to kind of raise interest or support for a permanent department of film at the Museum of Modern Art. And he wrote this, I think, in 36, maybe, or 34, because the film department there, I think, opened in 1936. So he's writing in the early 30s when movies are very new and Hollywood is very new and they're still very populist entertainments, popular entertainments. They're an art form, and they've come into their own, and some of the best films, of the 20th century were made in this era. But they weren't taken, I think, seriously as a work of art. But by likening the construction of a medieval cathedral to a movie, he both elevates the movie to, a work of high esteem, like a cathedral. When we think of what is the greatest accomplishment, it's like the whole Chartres Cathedral spiel that Orson Welles has at the end of F for Fake. Like, we look at a cathedral and it's the acme of human achievement in the European sphere, right, or the Western sphere. So to elevate cinema, you compare it to a cathedral, but also in comparing cathedrals to cinema, he like kind of returns it to the future. The Gothic architecture that this guy's talking about, or like the medieval high Gothic style that he's referring to, was the absolute vanguard of engineering technology when it came about. And it's engineering technology that also comes from the Middle East too, which is not surprising because a lot of advancements did. So, he's not reducing it to the level of cinema. He's like bringing it back to the future is how I would describe that. And I felt the desire to include that because that's how I feel about medieval cinema broadly, and about, the 14th century, or comparing our time to another time in general. That even though we think of these things as being very linear, this progression of one architectural style to another, one political arrangement to another, they're not linear at all. They're very cyclical, and I wouldn't even say cyclical. I'm sure it's even more chaotic, and it's just a spray chart of fate that has nothing to do with us. But it behooves us to look at the similarities between our era and the 14th century, because so much of the way that our society is structured now is still very much indebted to it. And it was also an incredibly heady time filled with remarkable works of art.
Um, thank you. Great answer. Thank
Hey,
you. Really.
you're welcome.
I loved hearing that quote in that movie, and I love hearing you talk about it then.
Is it
Okay,
easier or harder for you if I just run my mouth like this? I'm gonna
no, it's
smoke
good.
some.
That's the good. My favorite interviews are one where like we have a bit of a back and forth, but ultimately you just talk and feel free to talk as much as you want.
We should have been recording the fun back and forth at the beginning.
I know, but that's you can't. I can't start recording immediately. That's not. It feels uncomfortable. I don't want to. I don't want to. We can recreate. Okay, the interview we can go back and try to recreate some of the back and forth we can. We can talk about movies again. Okay, get in the formal zone. Next question. Okay, material question. We're talking about I guess my transition architecture, stones, bricks. How much money were you working with Revelations of Divine Love, and how was that? I guess kind of sub question. How different was the experience of that working at this budget level compared to the $15,000 of your previous feature, A Feast of Man, citing your great filmmaker magazine piece from a few years ago?
Oh yeah, great. That was a great piece. That was a lot of fun to write. Every dollar that we raised for this movie you see on screen. And we were probably working with a production budget for actual production of maybe, maybe like $75,000 at most. And that includes paying folks and everything like that. But, a big part of what you see on screen is because of the work of other people. That's, labor is really important. Um, a lot of stuff we got for free. So, like the fake candles that you see in Julian Cell, those are like battery powered, LED candles that you would get anywhere that I took a real candle and I spent a whole afternoon putting wax on these fake candles and and I had no idea if it was going to play until the minute I plunked it down. And having fake candles was written into the fucking script too, that all the candles would be fake, all the like fire would be fake in the real world. And then all the light and everything would be real in the visionary world so that you buy it, so that you're watching it and you go, okay, I believe this happened because it's more recognizable than Little Tiny Town. So we got a lot of stuff for free for materials for the arts, a lot of the fabric that made the costumes too. But it was still more money than I've ever had to work with in a film. And it's not even that much. People are saying this is a low budget movie, but like it's remarkable, like you know, how much things cost. And this was 3 years ago, so they cost even less than they do today. But we also spent a lot of money on foam. A lot of it was like the insulation foam that makes the stone for the church, and all the wood strips that you see is made out of pink insulation foam, just cutting sheets of pink foam and texturing it, painting it with a texture, stuff like that. Feast of Man was a little bit cheaper to do because we did it in an Airbnb and we all lived in the Airbnb. So, and our shooting budget for that, the production budget for that was like 15 grand. And then the post was over several years and probably, about the same as that or maybe a little more. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, the difference between $15,000 and $100,000 is like so vast to me. But at the same time, the difference between on a movie like $1 million and $10 million is just a matter of scale.
Mhm.
And I suppose you could say the same thing about low budget filmmaking too, that you still have to do the same thing every time, which is you have to solve the problem of how to make this look convincing or legitimate, or how to put this across to succeed in the thing that you're trying to do. Um, Believable, I guess, is the other word that people use. But how you do that on a material plane ultimately doesn't change that much because you're still doing the same exercises. You're still thinking of, what gets screen time in this scene to tell the story of what's going on, whether that's people talking, whether it's the way you frame the people talking, or how things look around them, or whatever the case may be. But if I had to do it over again between one of the two, I'd rather make $100,000 movie than a $15,000 movie. Although I could probably still make a $15,000 movie. I don't think I've lost the touch, the $15,000 touch.
You're on set. You're just wasting money left and right. You're like
Give me
you're
that
like
$85,000 while I burn it.
yeah.
The movie just
It's-
opens with like $85,000 lit on fire.
yeah. Well, because I remember in that filmmaker article, you were talking about like finding these very fancy looking clothes very cheaply at Goodwill. Just imagining you being like, no, we got to go and get the actual Brooks Brothers suit. We got to go buy. We got to go spend however much a suit
Yeah,
costs. Yeah.
we're getting it firsthand this time.
Yeah.
And yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
To not just scour thrift shops. Yeah. Okay. So Okay, so also on your previous feature, A Feast of Man. The thing when I was watching it, the thing like my tourist brain was latching onto was this sense of like this really claustrophobic, like and seriously lived in space,
Mhm.
as well as this kind of fever that's going on there. Like we mentioned earlier, but like I feel like Feast of Man really especially really that house felt like this Andy Milligan Seeds house to me. Um,
Yeah, it's a very Andy Milligan kind of movie too. Like it's shot in someone's house,
yeah, yeah,
$15,000.
people being mean to
Funnily
each
enough,
other.
so that's the movie. That's how I met Zach Clark, is because I had met him through our mutual friend Frank Mosley, because I said I was looking for an editor for Feast of Man, and Frank obviously is in the film, and is he ever? He does a great job. And he said, "You got to talk to my buddy Zach." And he introduced us, and we immediately hit it off. And he actually introduced Guru the Mad Monk with me when we showed it at Anthology for the series, because he's our foremost Milligan scholar. He's a man who understands like Andy Milligan through and through. And I think, I didn't know really about Andy Milligan until I met Zach, years later, like after I'd written the script and whatever. But it's nice to know that like the guy who went into cutting this film in my first feature, which is also very nerve wracking, not like the second one isn't also nerve wracking. They're just nerve wracking in slightly different ways. But the first movie you make, is really scary. And he had been in the mountain and stuff, and was like, "Don't worry, I got you." And it makes sense that this guy who loves Andy Milligan would look at a movie like Feast of Man and go, "I know exactly what to do with this. I know exactly what this is." I'm not 1/10 the genius that Andy Milligan was. I'm being completely serious with you. So
Yeah.
I don't want to make like these kinds of comparisons that sound haughty, but like in many ways it is very much an Andy Milligan movie, and I think that's beautiful. I think there's a rich tradition of American filmmaking on that scale that I would love to one day be a part of. If I leave anything behind me, that people mention me and Andy Milligan in the same breath as like success enough.
Well, they absolutely have and will continue to, I hope. And I think
So
that I also dream for this one day, perhaps, but I don't buy my stuff is
much
not.
I think it's the highest honor that an auteur can achieve, frankly, is the Andy Milligan like seal of
Yeah. Well,
confusion.
and you would never get it from the real guy as well. So that's like
No,
it's kind of like a reward, right? Or like a commendation
no.
because he would
I would
just hate anything.
I would be too scared to meet Andy Milligan IRL. And he, was I think alive while I was alive, so it's definitely possible
Could have
that we
crossed
could have
paths.
met.
Could have
We
met
could
while he
have.
was making Surgikill.
Would have been so scary.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it does. Not. Yeah, guy I love to read about more than I would like to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel that way also about like I'm really into like 70s grindhouse stuff and like the porn, like vintage porn stuff. But in terms of
Oh,
like
I just saw a great vintage porn at the New Beverly like 3 weeks ago.
what movie?
It was, oh, shoot, Expose Me Lovely from 1976. Do you know
Not
this one?
I've not heard
It's
this
like
one.
it's a Raymond Chandler porno.
Hell yeah. They made some crazy things.
Chandler detective. He goes from place to place. This, things ensue. I fell asleep like a couple times. Like I napped while watching it, which felt really good.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
people like used to, there are plenty of people, God bless them, who went to the old Times Square theaters for bodily gratification, and I'm totally in favor of this.
I
But
just I feel like I couldn't. I'm like, yeah, I want to go see the movies, but I don't think I would want to be in that space. I wouldn't want to be in like the 70s grindhouse theater where everyone's masturbating. I don't think. I don't think that's for me
that
necessarily.
wouldn't bother me. I think the most important thing that those places can provide is a place to take a nap in Midtown when
Hmm.
you have to kill 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. Because let me tell you what New York City does not have anymore: a place where you can nap for 4 hours, like a movie theater that's cheap enough that you can pop into and like nap in a movie theater for 3 hours, then go about the rest of your day. It's become too expensive for that. But like that's what the grindhouse circuit, as much as there was sucking and fucking, there was also a lot of
There's
snoozing.
well, yeah, a lot of homeless people hanging out because there's no place to stay. Have you ever read Sammy Delaney book,
Oh,
Brain?
Red Times Square Blue.
Yes, that book.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read it not long ago. I really enjoyed it, and I'm often thinking of this passage in the book where he talks about the difference between contact and networking. And this
Yeah.
has come up for me in the most, you know, recent few weeks, because even though this is happening in the future, the film has just opened, here in New York, and a lot of people have been like, talking about this like idea of Oh, what's what I'm looking for? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. I'm too stoned to continue this interview. Oh, the networking and the and contact. There we go. I got so wrapped up in explaining my success that I forgot about it. So Delaney talks about networking and contact is like networking has like a business air to it, or it has like a specific exchange or transactional nature in mind versus contact, which happens sort of more organically and is more sociable. But he uses, let's say you've got as an example, you have a photo show opening and you want it to be reviewed favorably. You might try to network with the critic who you don't know, or you might, know someone who is at a publication that happens to be a friend of yours, and you would mention it and they would be like, oh, not a bad idea. Or they'd think, oh, I've got, I can write this thing. Let me think of somebody who's got a show going on. And this has come up a lot in talking about the film because there's a lot of people in this movie that I know, like from going to the movies, and people that I've also worked with and stuff in other ways, or, as a writer, programmer, or whatever. And like Delaney's assessment of this, I think is the perfect, it's like the perfect antidote to the way that people have been thinking about working together and collaborating with one another as of late, which feels very like you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, or very like hustle driven and sort of, your network is your net worth type stuff. Maybe in the future when this is airing, that guy will have disappeared, those kinds of people, and we'll be free of them.
That would be nice.
It would
There's
be nice.
do you feel like is the New York film art scene, do you feel like it is very network heavy? Do you ever feel like you can walk into a room and just chill and not feel like you're in the oh I have to get my contacts in the zone, you know?
I think that has everything. Well, it has some things to do with the environment, but it has a lot to do with the individual and what kind of mindset you have going into a social situation and what you believe the function of a social situation is for. And for me, I enjoy it the way that my body enjoys vitamin D. Like it's a necessity for me to have a certain amount of camaraderie and fellowship and accord with other people. I find it you know energizing and also propelling. Like it propels me to want to leave the house, to engage with other people, to go see a movie, to wash my hair, to do anything. So I'm sure parts of it are very networky, and I've been in professional spheres where I've had to be in a more networky drag. But I don't know. I think people are thinking too hard about it. It's just going to the movies. Everybody, all we're doing is just going to the movies over here. It's not too much to worry about. It's the same everywhere. New Yorkers are just like you.
I don't believe it. Not what the internet tells me. They're way more important.
No way. If that were the case, there wouldn't be so many Australians here in New York. Or perhaps New York is important because there are so many Australians in it.
That's what I'm saying. I have multiple friends who have left town and gone to the faraway plains. So I have to say, it seems it's got a draw.
This should be the part that you play during the screening where I gas up the Australians. Just a super cut up Australian to get them in a good mood so they like the picture.
I
So they'll
do
be
it.
like, "Oh, she's all right."
Yeah. Melbourne's not that bad compared to New York. Yeah, they're like, oh, we'll like this movie. Yeah, I do have to
Yeah.
figure out what part of the interview I'm going to put with the movie. We'll figure that out later. Okay, back to Revelations of Divine Love. You that this movie and Feast of Man, I just think your kind of conception, these building of these interior spaces, these are very vivid spaces. And can you just talk about how you're approaching the Anchorite cell and the house in the Feast of Man, just thinking through these big interiors that are so important to the films?
Sure, absolutely. The interior is just it's not like the canvas where things are happening. It is the thing that's happening on the canvas. I think a lot of people think of the background and maybe contemporary filmmakers or filmmakers of, you know, less distinction think about the background of something as just like, well, what's happening behind them? Nothing. The actions, what they're talking about. Or they have like in a superhero movie, just a bunch of random shit back there that like nobody thought about. But it's part of the story, right? It's like a comic book. Like all these things are instead of a bunch of panels that go this way to tell the story of a comic book, it's like a bunch of panels that go this way to tell the visual story of like what's going on in there. And in a Feast of Man, as per usual, we're working with a low budget, but our production designer, Jim, who did a fantastic job, came through. Oh no, it was John. Jim was the second AC. They were a pair of brothers, John Stedman. Shout out to John if you're listening to this. He did a phenomenal job. He worked out a deal with a local antique dealer in Hudson, New York. And this is before Hudson blew up in a big way. I gotta say, this was like 2014 Hudson. So 2013 maybe. He got a bunch of like fantastic antiques that he really liked and brought them into the house to be dressing. And he picked out this stuff, and I'm like, so what do you think? He says, based on your script, I think about the kind of guy that Gallagher is, this kind of guy. This seems like something Gallagher would have. And he'd show me this stuff, and I look and I go, you're right. This is all shit Gallagher would have. And it's just that easy. If you're working with somebody who's really smart and talented, and they know how to dress a film or pick out things to flesh it out. Like, let's be honest. I have a hard enough time remembering like what I had for dinner the night before. So I can't think about every fucking thing that has to happen in this movie. Like, there's got to be other people like thinking about this stuff too. It's just like a safety measure so that you ensure that things don't come out looking like shit. And Feast of Man is no different. We just wanted to maximize as much as possible. And we also would have one side of the room dressed with all the camera equipment and our luggage. And then we'd turn around and we'd move all the furniture back to that side. And we move all the luggage this way. And, we had to maximize the space as much as possible. I really loved the house. I thought it was really beautiful. And I especially love the pocket doors. I don't know if I can write a movie that doesn't take place in one location or like three. I haven't, well, I've tried. I wrote a film about a haunted apartment complex. Again, it's one place. I think it's because I don't get out as much as I'd like. I like socializing, and I say this, but I don't travel much. So I very seldom am going to like other places other than like the same few. So I don't know. What would it be like to make a movie that had like 40 different locations? Like, I can't even imagine.
Do you
What
do
would that movie
you
even be?
are you like okay, like because I make stuff and I feel like I can't even think like that because then I'm like I can't make that. Is that a thing that you have to grapple with of like
Big part of it is the budget and thinking about practicality. It's so much more practical to have one place that you can dress and redress. And in a way, this, Revelations was a really good exercise in that, because what you're seeing, like I said, is, with the exception of the visions, all shot in that studio.
Mhm.
And it's all just redressing and modifying different parts of that studio and just like wringing as much out of the space as we possibly could. The kitchen in Julian's house is also the kitchen at the convent, but it's been redressed. Father Ambrose's quarter, where he has the conversation with I'm now spoiling the movie for the people who are about to watch it, but Father Ambrose's
I think
quarter,
it's gonna play afterwards actually. I think it's
I was
gonna
going to
play
play after,
yeah.
where his little living quarter, where he's talking to the other priest about, hey, why are you poor? And he's like, I like being poor.
Mhm.
That was the Sarah's room, and then there was a wall, and then there was Julian's cell. And after we wrapped Tessa and filmed all the stuff that we had to film in there, we tore down that wall and we dressed the space for multiple locations. When Ambrose sees the plague victim and he's like this, and it's like the kind of low angle shot on him, that's the other side of Julian's cell that we just redressed. There's so much redressing. I mean, we shot the movie, I think, over like 20 days, 21 days, three working weeks, but in the same place. And honestly, a lot of the crew enjoyed having to just go to one place every day, like the same place for work. And a lot of them lived in Ridgewood, where we shot the movie. So yeah, I guess, I should maybe think about a movie that has more than one location. But if you want to get a movie done, having like one location is it's very convenient. And the crew likes it too, especially if you're local and they can just sleep in their own bed at night, and you don't have to worry about the weather. You've got the walk away. You don't have to pack anything. You can leave everything set. You can dress for the next day and leave it. And nobody will touch it. Yeah, one location. I don't know. I'm back around on one location now. I think I'm sticking with the one location thing.
Yeah. And especially I feel like you're really good at making the one location feel like a whole, like a
Man,
place, like a real place that you could like you're in for the duration of the movie. I feel like I was living in but I'm talking about these movies, but I really feel like especially in Revelations, I was like I'm living in the cell.
yeah,
Um,
you're
which
there.
yeah, exactly. I'm there. And it's also okay, that kind of ties to my next question actually, which is like I think there's an interesting tension in Revelations between like the space and how Julian interacts with the outside world and how the outside world interacts with her. And that also ties into like seeing. Like I'm remembering there's a bit early on in the movie where Julian's talking to some like nice German fellows, and they're like, "What are you working on?" And she's showing them the manuscript, right? And then you cut to Sarah, her companion, watching from like the hole in the wall, right? And like kind of voyeuristically seeing her. So I guess my question is just like, can you speak to this kind of tension between like Julian's space and her relationship with the outside world and how other characters and the viewer is interacting with her as well?
Sure. So Sarah, the character of Sarah in the film, um, is like cited as a real person in one of the few primary source documents that we have that attest to Julian's life, which is a will. The will's a certain amount of money from Countess Ufford, the lady she talks to, getting into this public private discourse. The lady she talks to, the noblewoman, that woman in real life left the real Julian a will, like some money in her will. And it was for Julian at the Anchorage at Norwich, is what it says in the will, and Sarah, who lives with her. And so Sarah's like her maid or her girl Friday. And this is like not uncommon for anchorites to have like an attendant. And we wrote some backstory for the two of them too, because part of us caring about Julian is caring about the people around her that are navigating this new situation, because she doesn't start off. I mean, the film starts off with her being walled in to kind of trick you into thinking some bad medieval shit's going to happen. And then you find out that she wanted to do it. And it's like, well, what would you do if somebody that you loved, like, wanted to make this decision? Like, what would you do about it? How would you handle it? The person that you like love more than anybody, or your child, is like, yeah, I want to lock myself in a room forever, for the rest of my life and write this thing. It sounds insane, but people did it like all the time back then. Like, it was a thing that people did because they, lived in a society where they believed such things were possible and even encouraged. So how do you navigate that? I don't know. I mean, I think also what the film has to say, or at least for me, about making any kind of work, is that you owe something to yourself, but you owe something to other people too, and that the two can't exist without the other. To make something, you have to have a wellspring of experience and memory and sensory input and knowledge of human life and human experience in order to transmute that into a work of whatever the work may be. But at the same time, like, how can you really commit yourself to it except by hiding away, or hiding some part of yourself away? So yeah, I don't know. It's tough being an artist, I guess. We have it so tough. But people are driven by all kinds of circumstances to like alienate them, or to isolate, or to pull away. And like, it's nice to know that for Julian, however she might feel about it, and I think what the film ultimately settles on is that she knows that she'll never answer the question really of, I'm an anchoress and yet people can still talk to me. The film kind of leaves it ambiguous because you see her looking through the chink, and it's kind of the only other opening in the space, and it's there to be this kind of fantastical space. So you don't know if it's even real or part of a visionary space either, right? But I think she knows that it's a constant negotiation. I think what the film tries to convey is that it's a constant negotiation between these two things, the way that any two things in your life are constantly negotiating with each other. I think it's cool that Sarah's in there because, again, to know Julian as a modern audience member or moviegoer, your first inclination is to go, who is this woman? Like, why do I care about her? Besides the fact that she's beautiful and the performance is beautiful. But why do I care about this woman's clearly mentally ill? She's hallucinating, having other people around her that know that this happened to her and believe that it happened to her because it was a fact of life in this era, gives legitimacy to her experience for the viewer. We get to see ourselves as a regular person interacting with Julian. And it's a nice way to show also like other kinds of people in the Middle Ages and what other people's lives could have been like, and the professions that they did, or the station they had in this world, or their relationship to God or community. I think about the Middle Ages a lot. I thought about it a lot while I was making this movie, and I did a lot of research, and there's so many things about it that I wish I could have put into the film and couldn't quite figure out how. So many things I wanted to say about the time. The film is as much, I think, a making of itself on film, and also a thing about the era, and my thoughts about it. It's about two things at once. Again, these two things that are, yeah, I know, so many binary. I thought we were done with binaries in like 2026, but I guess we're not.
Dialectic.
Maybe it's the dialectic. Is that what the dialectic is when people talk about the dialectic?
It's just two things that are like contradict each other. Whoa, what?
I don't know how that is. It because you said dialectic?
Why did you prank me? I feel like I've been that was wonderful. I felt like that was the revelation for myself.
It happened on accident.
Wow.
So that's what a dialectic is.
Maybe sometimes.
So when two things are when it's like one or the other, and you're like,
I feel like if it's just one or the other, and you can say that one, that's not a dialectic. But if you say one or the other, and then you go, I don't know, that's a dialectic.
One or the other, which one? That's
Exactly.
the dialectic. All
Because
right.
really, it's the third one. And so,
Wow.
and also, okay, I like we were talking about this here of like the movie because I totally see what you're saying of like I agree in terms of from my perspective as a viewer of like the movie is so much of her is negotiating what does it mean for me to be here but also be a part of the greater world. And I think one of the my favorite parts of the movie that kind of grapples with this is when she talks to the young man and kind of helps him start incites this like low-key revolt that fails. And I think it's really fascinating because like what she's saying to him is really like powerful, right? And like morally righteous. And then it goes badly, and she knows that it goes badly, but she doesn't see it. Like there's this great distance between like this act she took to talk to this person and like the actual consequences of it. Um, and yeah, I mean, can you talk a bit about that character of the young man who grabs the axe?
Yeah. I think it's a classic example of saying something and then finding out that your words have meaning and then not knowing how to feel about it. And in Julian's case, I wanted to situate her working on the text within the film because there are some scholars who think that she did it through a scribe, which is less interesting to me. Although a version of this with a scribe could be kind of cool, but I don't really know how else you would do it. And I also wanted to make a Bresson slash Paul Schrader movie where somebody's writing in a room and talking to somebody, like that was deliberate. Like I wanted to make a film in the transcendental style, right? So, and a lot of people brought it up, but just as many people haven't, and which I'm kind of curious about.
People are afraid to
So
bring up Paul Schrader right now. That's why.
I just rewatched Last Temptation of Christ. Look, this guy is a creep, bar none. He made some of the greatest films
True.
ever. Also true. Both it's the dialectic.
It's the
That's
dialectic. There we
I
go.
got it. Yes. Where's my PhD? Anyway, I forgot what we were talking about.
Uh,
Um,
the woman in a room.
the woman in a room. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to make like a woman in a room movie. Why not? I mean, your words have meaning, and she's working on this text. I almost said this film, which goes to show you also how still attached to it I am as like a story. But she's working on this text, and she's thinking like this is something I just have to do. And now suddenly other people are asking me about it, and I have to do it. And I also have to find this time for myself. But these people want my opinion. And this guy Walter posted up for fucking 3 days, like he really wanted to talk to her. You know what I mean? She's not like a secluded person, like she is secluded, but like the job of an anchoress is still to be a part of the church architecture, which means you're accessible to the public. That's one of the most common public spaces in the 14th century, right? Is a church. So, you know, she's talking to Walter, and like, do I really think that Julian of Norwich and like Walter or John Ball or whomever was present at the actual uprising in 1381? Do I think that they had a discourse? No, man. Like, of course not. I'm not gonna. That's goofy. That's fanfic stuff. But having her talk to somebody in this way that's like, yeah, I believe you should do this, and then like somebody's actually got to go out and do it, and they're the one who's actually paying the price. It's like, okay, wow, like I have to be scrupulous now. And it also gives her a tremendous sense of between that and the plague, I think, like a sense of futility in a weird way, as if the thing is like too powerful and also not at all like something you want to pursue. Although if you talk to Tessa about Julian and who Julian is and what she represents and how she approaches these situations, she might have some of the same answers as me or completely different answers. Because when we were working together and we were talking about this character, like I just said, the way that this film resonates with me or what it means to me, having done it at different phases of my life, like what it means changes like every day. Like sometimes I look at it and I go, being an artist is to be a coward. And then sometimes I look at it and I go, being an artist is to be, a solver of problems or a counselor or somebody who simply works in the realm of beauty or whatever the case may be. It takes on a bunch of different meanings. I have a quick question for you, which you should cut, which is how many more questions do you have?
I have uh about I have four, but I can make it one or two or none.
Or we can do them rapid fire
We can do a
with a
rapid
chess.
fire. You kind of already answered one of them. I was basically okay. I can next question is just can you talk a little bit more about working with the lead actor Tessa Strain because you talked about her having kind of maybe a different perception of the character than you you worked with her previously. Was she is she an actor by trade by default? What's
She's she's like me. She's an artist who has a day job. She has acted for as long as I've known her, and I've known her since third grade. We met when we were 9 years old, in school in the San Fernando Valley, and we've been pals ever since. And she's the greatest actress I know. I saw her in a school production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and she blew me away. And she did theater, throughout high school too, and in college she studied theater and she directed plays too. She has more of a theater background, I think, than a film. Like I'm the only person I think who's put her in a movie or two. I put her in one film that no one will ever see that I made like before Feast of Man in my friend's apartments. My Forbidden Mumblecore movie that
wait,
is decorated but not nicely,
how
or not as well.
you'll never see the light of day? I want to see it.
I'll send it to you, but you can't really,
I won't spread it.
you won't get much out of it. It's you know what it has value as a time capsule. Bushwick playing itself at a very specific time and place that I'm now old enough to appreciate in the rear view, right? So but she did a great job in it, playing like this really kind of like bitchy event promoter girl. She was really funny, and she trusted me and did all kinds of crazy stuff. She made out with the other actress. She, hung around and stuff. She was really supportive, and she did a great job. And I wrote the part for her because, again, she's the best actress I know, and I knew that she would bring some cool shit to it because she is like myself, a total head. She loves classic cinema. She loves, the Middle Ages and art history and history in general. And she's very well read. She's very smart. She's somebody who would understand the assignment. I knew she was going to do a great job. And she also, kind of trusted this whole process enough to move here for a month. She moved into like a studio apartment sublet near the studio and lived here for like a month and just like ping pong back and forth between her apartment and the set. And it felt, she said that as much in the press recently, that it felt not unlike being an anchoress of going between this little apartment and this little space. So I don't know. I guess everybody's got teeny tiny spaces on the mind, on the brain. I would work with her again. Of course, she's like my best friend. I got to figure out a way to put her in everything now, but it's going to be fun too. We've been joking about making a spaceship movie where she's alone on a spaceship, like just coming up with like she's in a room and that's the movie, but like in different settings. A spaceship. One of them was like at a toll booth, like when you pay the toll on the highway, like a toll collector booth. Another one could be like a tugboat, like on a tugboat, how there's like the little captain's kind of like, you know what a tugboat
I
is,
know what a
don't you?
tugboat is. They got a little sail on a tugboat.
There's like a little room up top where the captain kind of sits and surveys things, and it's a little room. Or maybe a lighthouse could be another one. There are just so many one woman in a room movies you could make.
Yeah. I'm excited for all of them. All
Thank
right,
you.
last question. We'll wrap this up. I feel like an asshole with asking you this as the last question now, but here we go. Okay. Uh, what is your personal relationship with faith? And secondarily, how do you think people's relationship with faith and religion has changed since Julian's time? Maybe ties together.
Well, I'll start with the second part first, which is that it's changed a lot, I suppose, because the church was very much kind of an enmeshed, an interwoven institution that touched every part of life for people in the European Middle Ages. And I'm sure elsewhere too, but this is only the narrow scope of my understanding as an armchair historian. The way that I talked about the church to people, oh, look who's back. Julian was going to have a cat in the movie too, but we couldn't find a cat wrangler because it was common for anchoresses to have cats because it takes care of the mice.
Got it. Okay.
That's literally why cats were invented. That was their job. That is their job.
It'd be nice to have a cat in a cell.
I think so. I think I'd go nuts. In fact, I would love having a cat in a cell because I wouldn't go nuts. I'd have one other guy to hang out with.
This cat makes me feel nuts. Anyway, go on.
The way I explained the medieval Catholic Church to people on this film when they were like, okay, the church, everyone believes in it. Does that mean everyone's very pious? Does it mean that they're very judgmental? Does it mean, we have an idea of what we think Christian fundamentalism is today? It's very different. In some ways it's the same, but it's very different. Medieval people were really just like regular people. And in a lot of medieval literature, people are fucking and farting and cheating each other and making jokes and getting drunk and dancing and doing all the things we do now, right? So I described the Catholic Church as something like the internet, which is that you go to, on the internet, we're on it right now. Like there's a thing here that connects me to you and we can talk. But there's also like a specific place where you go to access it, right? Like you can go to the library, you can go to the whatever. It's around you all the time. It has infrastructure, right, in the form of the computer or in the cables that move the electricity and the signal around or whatever the case may be. But you're also, even when you're not on the internet, it's around you all the time and you're still partially thinking about it. And that's how I describe the Catholic Church, the Western medieval European Catholic Church to people when I talked about faith in this film. So when I say that, yes, our relationship to faith now is different from the 14th century, but in many ways it's also not, that's kind of what I mean. Like there's always going to be something that you're aware of bigger than you that's like keeping tabs on you or that you have to participate in because of the kind of social isolation that you risk when you don't. If you were excommunicated from the church, you would lose your business. I mean, it was like a big deal. But there's a lot of leeway too, just like anything else. People find ways to exercise their autonomy to whatever degree of freedom they can within the institutions that they live in. And I think that the Middle Ages are a perfect example of that. My relationship to faith is that I think the real mystery, the real beauty is not the question of whether or not there's a higher power or order of the universe or some sort of explanation or whatever. I think the true mystery and the true magic and the true beauty of the whole project is that we conceive of it at all, that we think about it, that we contemplate the meaning of our existence, that we ascribe meaning to symbols or to stories or to sacred objects, that we imbue these things with a devotion to the divine, that we're certain that these divine things exist. All of the parts of our participation in this, willing and unwilling, that's like the real beauty and the real mystery. That's because that's the only thing I can see proof of. That's the best example I can think of as proof of the divine, is the proof that I see of us contemplating it at all. I hope that answers your question. Oh, one thing I wanted to add, getting back to the Last Temptation of Christ commentary track, Willem Dafoe talked about getting asked this question on the press tour for Last Temptation of Christ. He said, people always want to ask you, what's your relationship to faith? Or are you a spiritual person when you do a religious movie? And I'm watching this going, he's right, because I made a religious movie and people have been asking about it. But it's a great question. I think it's a completely valid one to ask. Why make a film about religion if you don't have any feeling toward it one way or the other? I think the guys that made a lot of those biblical epics probably thought of a religious movie as it's just the religious movie. We're just going to make a big spectacle and we'll tack the Jesus part onto it. But really, it's more like ancient Rome than it is like early Christendom. But, you don't make a movie about this sort of thing if you don't at least wonder about it and speculate as to whether or not there's, something bigger than the self. I think the question is the answer. That's my Talmudic response.
The question is the answer.
I don't even think that's in the Talmud. I'm just making shit up. But it sounds like it could have been.
I believed you. I had no doubt in my mind that was from the Talmud. So
you were like, this lady knows her Talmud.
Well, exactly. Well, I would not use the word Talmudic as confidently as you did. So I was like,
oh, okay. Well, yeah. I got it.
Well, that's the end of my questions.
Wow, great end of your questions. Thanks for letting me hang out and virtually smoke weed, realistically smoke weed virtually with you.
I wish I could have joined you, but I could. But know that I will in a few minutes as well. So.
Well, you're in Australia, so you did it yesterday because that's the time it is now here.
Exactly, that's true. Exactly, your time.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, I would have been smoking.
This time yesterday, you were smoking that weed.
Exactly.
So you were just me on Australia time.
We're just swapping places. This is the dialectic again, right?
Yeah, the dialectic at work. Thank you so much for teaching me what the dialectic is, because I was so afraid to ask, but I see it everywhere, and I was like, "Rah!"
I feel like
I never got a good answer. Like I tried looking up like dialectic, and I read the Wikipedia, and I'm like, "What is this?"
I teach a film studies class at the university, and this came up a few months ago, and suddenly the student was like, "What is dialectic?" And then suddenly I had to, on the fly, be like, "I have to know what this is." So that was.
I'm the teacher. I have to have the answer.
Yeah. But I was just like, it's just cuts. I was just like, just shot one, shot two. That's the dialectic.
Hey, bro, that's the dialectic.
Hey. Yeah. Hey.
Dialectic, yeah. All right. Well, on that note, I got to get back to Total Recall.
Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, talk